I would like to recall an incident from my college days. During a break between classes, I was approached by the supervisor of our group, Megan Thompson. She intercepted me on the way out of the classroom, and when the other students had left, she pushed me against the wall and pulled me closer, not by the shoulders, but a little lower. I was about to voice my objections, but before I could utter a word, Megan leaned over and whispered sharply, "So Casanova, are you trying to run away again?" I interrupted her by asking, "What's the matter? What did I do wrong?" Megan looked around to make sure no one was eavesdropping. After all, we were still in the hallway of the university, not the best place to discuss personal matters. She finally let me go, though she still continued to tug at my clothes, getting me cleaned up. Megan opened the door and peered into the empty hallway. Most of the students were at the bar, taking advantage of the lunch break. She grabbed my hand. "Megan, where are we going?" I asked. "Follow me, student," she ordered, ignoring my protests that it wasn't lunchtime yet. "You're disrupting my schedule." "I have rights too," I muttered. But Megan promised ominously, "I'll show you your rights and responsibilities soon." She dragged me into the department office, where no one else was, and closed the door behind us. She slipped the key into her jacket pocket, and I realized it wasn't going to be easy to escape. I couldn't just jump out of a third-story window. Besides, despite her stern appearance, she was charming. Slender, with a curvaceous figure, in a short skirt and a jacket that she struggled to keep buttoned, she sat on the edge of the table, swaying her legs slightly, and looked at me like an investigator, silently, waiting for me to speak. I sat back in my chair, confused and not understanding what I had done wrong. Then she finally spoke. "Well, Matt, explain to me why you've been avoiding me for the last 4 days." I stammered. "Megan, I've been going to all my classes. If you haven't seen me, it's only because I've been busy." She interrupted me. "Come on, you could have at least stopped by or called me. Am I not important to you anymore? Or are you already looking at someone else?" Her voice softened and her eyes lowered. She was possessive and jealous, something I'd known since the beginning of our relationship at the beginning of the school year. We were only 2 years apart. Our group had been assigned to her when I moved into my sophomore year, and she had just graduated from the same university. I missed 2 years because of the Army. Megan even offered to let me meet her parents, showing me how serious she was about us. Noticing the change in her mood, I stood up and slowly walked over to her, gently placing my hand on her arm. "You know, I've missed you too. You're acting like a little girl. Of course, you're the only one for me." Megan sighed, leaning her head against my chest. "I'm just so jealous. I don't want you to look at anyone else. I love you." She pulled away slightly and smiled, the tension subsiding. At that moment, someone grabbed the doorknob, but quickly backed away when they realized the office was occupied. Megan opened the door and looked around the hallway, which was still empty, then turned to me again. "Come over tonight," she said. "You're asking me out on a date?" I teased. "Actually, I want you to meet my mom," she replied. Her father had long since left for another woman, but Megan and her mom remained on good terms. Although meeting her family didn't make me particularly excited, I decided not to make a big fuss about it. Toward evening, I showed up at Megan's apartment. It was a cozy, well-furnished place, and I was greeted by her mother, Jessica Thompson. She was a striking woman, barely in her 40s, with a stunning figure. She was wearing a fitted dress that emphasized her curves and looked more like Megan's friend than her mother. "Mom, this is Matt," Megan said, introducing me as I handed Jessica a bouquet of flowers. Jessica smiled warmly, clearly charmed by my gesture. We moved into the kitchen to eat dinner. Over glasses of red wine, the conversation flowed easily between Megan, her mother, and me. As the evening went on, I couldn't help but notice how Jessica's gaze would occasionally linger on me, and her body language indicated more than just casual interest. At one point, when Jessica returned from the bathroom, we crossed paths in the narrow hallway. As we passed each other, her hand touched my arm, and that lingering touch made my thoughts dart. Was it intentional? Or had I just dreamed the whole thing? Later, when we sat down at the table again, I decided to check things out. Under the table, I accidentally caught my foot on Jessica's leg. To my surprise, she didn't pull away or even react in any way. Instead, she continued her conversation with Megan as if nothing had happened. My suspicions were confirmed when a few moments later, Jessica smiled faintly across the table at me. The next day, Megan had classes all day, so I took the opportunity to visit Jessica. When I arrived, she seemed nervous, clenching her hands into fists, not knowing what to say. But I reassured her. "Jessica, we agreed yesterday that we would understand each other without words." That was all it took. From that moment on, a whirlwind of adventure swept over us. Jessica was relentless, and by lunchtime, I was exhausted and making excuses to leave. But she pulled me back, again and again, until I could barely stand on my feet. We were both sworn to secrecy, knowing full well that the consequences could be dire. For the next 2 years, I juggled my relationship with Megan while secretly dating Jessica. It was a dangerous game, but I played it carefully, trying to make sure both women were happy, and I finished my education without too much trouble.